Hi, I'm Catherine.
And I'm Gail. And welcome to Women Over 70 Aging Reimagined, our award winning podcast. Visit womenover70.com to learn about how you may become involved. And join Aging Reimagined Circle and enjoy free participation in our online monthly programs. And we thank you for listening. Before we start our interview today, I want to tell you about a product I'm really loving. As skin ages, it becomes more fragile and bruises more easily, especially on the back of hands and forearms. I'm loving Skin Tensa Bruise Cream, developed by Harvard-trained dermatologists specifically for mature skin. It gently moisturizes and helps bruises fade faster. Find it at skintensive.com, and for 25% off, use the code WO70.
Now, I am pleased to introduce Donna Younger, age 72, my colleague and friend of some 40 years.
That's right.
We connected at DePaul University, where we both served on the full-time faculty and now as adjunct faculty. I've long admired Donna's ability to foster growth and development among diverse adult learners. And her favorite course, which she teaches for undergraduate and graduate students, focuses on helping them hone attitudes and skills in what's known as emotional intelligence or emotional social competence. But now, in semi-retirement, Donna is actively contemplating her own further development as a spiritual being. She's being mentored in preparation for mentoring others on their spiritual paths, and Donna's willing to tell us about where she is on her journey, which she refers to as an emergent design. Welcome, Donna, to Women Over 70. We're delighted to have you.
Thanks for having me here.
Let's dive in. What are some of the defining or pivotal moments that have brought you to your spiritual journey?
I'm at one because I'm about to begin a certificate program in spiritual direction, and much like other preparation programs I've been in, is as much about developing yourself as it is about developing skills to help other people. But it feels very much like I'm exposing myself in a really good way. So actually, we had just received information from the program, and am in the midst of writing a spiritual autobiography, which is daunting. You were asking about what's led me here, and I thought about that both from your prompt, but also for doing the autobiography. I think that I had the great good fortune when I was really young, beginning my career in teaching, to be thrust into environments with people whose background and worldview was very different from my own. I grew up and lived in Memphis, and I'm 72, so I was there in the 50s and 60s. And when I finished college, my first teaching job was at a yeshiva. And many people didn't know there was such a thing in Memphis at the time, but indeed. And I knew very little about Judaism. I knew very little about the structure of it, or the beliefs and the connective tissue of it. And so it was really illuminating. I was convinced I learned more that year than the kids did. And then not long after that, it was clear I wasn't going to have a career at the yeshiva. So after about a year, I moved on to another job. And part of that job took me into the federal prison in Memphis to run a program and also to teach. And similarly, I talked with men whose background was very different from my own, and yet very similar. I think the takeaway for me at that point was I saw very little difference between the guys who were in and the people I knew who were out in terms of ethics and morality and well-being. Now, the population changed a lot while I was there, and that changed too, with people who were more committed to a criminal life. But both of those things, and then later on, travel to Africa, taught me fairly early and continuously that my little worldview that I grew up with was very limited and, while precious to me, not all that I needed and not all that was.
So how does that connect with spirituality, with your spiritual being?
Well, I think that I think it at the point that I experienced those things, I was really curious. I'm blessed with genuine rabid curiosity about many things and certainly about people. So I was curious about what bound us together because it certainly was a common experience, or even for the most part, a common worldview. But there was a nugget of worldview that was the same, and there was the ineffable that was a connection, and there we go. Trying to nail that unseen, unspoken spark in us that connects us, took me down that path. I didn't have language for it, and I wouldn't have talked about it the same way then, but I think that was it. And School for New Learning emphasized it a different way. It's really direct and pervasive focus on growth, kept me curious, kept me questioning, and kept me sort of weaving um, experiences from students and colleagues into this notion about difference but similarity. And then, I had grown up in the church, but the church didn't work for me although I kept it in my life in and out. But I really decided, and when I was around 50, that I was going to resolve my questions. Um, I would I would sort of put to rest these things. And so then became really explicit and um, in focusing on religion, the structure, theoretically, that is the structure for exploring spirituality. And that those two things together, I think, just led me then a few years ago, about 5 years ago, to start working with a spiritual director. And
You,
that very much got me here.
thank you. Go ahead, Mikhail.
I have a question for you. Do you think that every human being has a spiritual side to them?
Oh, absolutely. They may not attend to it.
Mm-hmm.
I was asking a year ago, year and a half ago, I was talking to my students in my emotional intelligence class about spirituality as a dimension of well-being. And many of them said, "Yeah, I don't really. That's not a part of my life." And I did not argue with them, but my my turn on that was that is very much a part of your life, whether you attend to it or not. Your spirit influences you. Your spirit urges you one direction or the other, and helps add a layer of understanding your experience, whether you name it that or not. I believe.
So you mentioned that you have been working with a spiritual director yourself,
Yeah.
and you and I have talked about that some. So tell us a little bit about what that's like and how you work together.
The most striking thing about that, and I won't go on and on, but the most striking thing about that was how accidental it seemed that we met, and and our meeting emerged into spiritual direction, because it was actually a business call that put us on Zoom together, and then that conversation emerged. Um, he is very, very skilled and very experienced in spiritual direction, and was really was really good about tossing crumbs out for me, and didn't and for a long time didn't frame what we were doing as spiritual direction. And and time to time would pause. I mean, this it's been 5 years now. So, it would pause and say, "Do you want to continue? If it gets to a point it's too hard, it's okay to stop." And so I really appreciated that process management, um, being a processy person. And he has, especially in the last year or a little more, become very good at knowing when to push hard and when to support. He's always been good at it, but it's been especially critical in the past year.
So I'm imagining that your questions have changed. You said you started out, you're gonna resolve these questions when you're 50. Have your questions changed over time?
Oh, yeah. Um, yes, the big question that led me to go find a church community, um, 22 years ago or thereabouts, was what's the big deal with Jesus? Because I was raised as a Protestant. I was raised as a Methodist in the deep South, where it's more Baptist than Methodist. It's a very different approach to Christianity in some ways. But it was very much soaked in blood of the lamb, as Flannery O'Connor talks about the Christ-haunted landscape. It is. And that notion of, the only way is Jesus, and if you're not in, you're definitely out. And it bothered me from the time I was really little. But I was smart enough not to give voice to it. And so that was the question, I think, that took me. I wanted to be in a community, and an accepting community that let me ask questions. And I was very lucky to find one. It was Lutheran, no doubt, and Missouri Synod, no doubt. I mean, no unusual. And now the questions are more about, well, they're quite varied, but I have not perfected my answer for myself to what binds religious systems together. Because I do think religion is not. I think religion is an important dimension of spirituality. Um, it's a useful tool for spirituality. Spirituality to me is the canopy, is the framework, but religion is an important tool for that. And I'm still working to understand to what extent. And I like the idea of reconciling everything into one. And there's some systems that make that hard. So I haven't finished that work yet. I may never.
You may never, yeah. Emergent design, as you have said.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is that, I don't know if you remember giving me this book when I got divorced a while ago, but you gave me Composing a Life
Oh,
by Mary Catherine Bateson. And the notion that when we're young, we think we're going to work our plan, and it will be, it might not be quite the pace we have in mind, but we have a plan and we're going to work it, and that's where we're going to be. And you discover that isn't the case. I'm quite happy with emergent design. I actually rejoice in discovery, and then letting the discovery throw me off track and finding a new track.
I've always thought that spirituality is a part of your religion. And yet, from reading and listening to many other people, it seems that spirituality can live on its own. Now you just said that you feel like I do, that it's a part of religion. They're not separate.
Actually, I would say it differently, Gail. Maybe I wasn't clear. I think it's the opposite. I think religion is a subset of spirituality. I think spirituality is pervasive, universal. And religion is culturally specific in many cases. And in some cases, many people practice nurturing their spirit outside of a recognized religious system. So maybe we're saying the same thing, but I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's clearer for everyone.
So, as you'll be starting this certification course to be a spiritual director.
Right.
What's your aspiration? What do you envision when you are a spiritual director for others?
Jim just asked me this question. My spiritual director asked me this question, and I was amazed that I didn't have to struggle for an answer. The thing I most want is to open people up to their spiritual nature. one of the wonderful things about spiritual direction as opposed to other forms of coaching and mentoring is that you're not working toward an endpoint. It is very much about the process and seeing where experience leads you. And I, especially after hearing my students say so casually, I don't really have a spiritual nature. I'm not very spiritual. And I want to say, okay, let's define terms. You actually are. I didn't do that. But I want to have that kind of interaction with people who deny that they have a spiritual nature.
Oh. So where will you find them?
That's a great question. It really is. Um, I I'm hoping that I will get some insight into that. I do know that because I am part of a church community now, and I chose to run a group that is a little bit of swimming upstream from the Lutherans with the Lutherans, and some of the folks that I meet with have recommended people to me just because they know me. I think it's very tough to choose, and people do it, but I think it's very tough to choose a spiritual director without any sense of relationship to start with. On the other hand, it's also a woman I'm working with right now was one of my students, and it's really challenging to switch roles. I'm no longer your teacher, and I'm not going to be teaching you, and to have to reinforce that and gently reshape the relationship away from teaching.
So be open to all age groups?
Sure.
Yeah. Men, women.
Absolutely.
And
One of the great things about this program, and it's one of the reasons I chose the program at the Hayden Institute, is it is faith neutral. So atheists who say, I really want to delve into this are welcome. And the program is designed to help spiritual directors serve people who come from any orientation or lack of an orientation.
Where's Hayden Institute, and how do we find out about it?
The Hayden Institute, that's spelled Haden, is it's located in Asheville, North Carolina, and their program distinguishes itself from others in a couple of ways. One is that there's a very strong component of intensive weekends among cohorts. Not all programs, increasingly like the culture, where many of the programs are really limited to Zoom and phone calls and no full body contact. And I really wanted to be with people studying this. And they also have a very strong orientation toward Jungian psychology. And I've experienced the value of that, and I wanted to learn more about it.
well, Donna, we were always going to take a road trip to Asheville, so
Let's
maybe
go.
I can accompany you on one of your.
And while you're poking around, the conference center will lure you. It's the Canuga Conference Center in Hendersonville where we meet. So you can go poke around. It's a lovely place.
Let me know.
All right, will do. When I graduate, you can go with me.
How long of a course is it?
2 years.
Okay, that's
2 years, 3 intensives each year. So I'll be there for 6 long weekends.
Nice. Well, that's so exciting. So
It
exciting.
is.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about, on the one hand, it's nice to have this conversation on the front end or before I start. On the other, it'd be really nice to be able to incorporate that experience into some of the questions you've asked. But
We can have you back in a couple of years,
if I'm interesting enough, you can have me back in a couple of years.
See.
Sounds
So-
good.
I'm curious about, in what ways do you find purpose and joy in your life? We know about this, what we've just been talking about, but other aspects of your life.
I don't know that they're wildly different, but one of the things that I'm listening to a book by David Brooks, How to Know a Person. You may have seen that on And at night, I'm trying to listen more than read on the screen, so I, sleep better. And he reads his book, so that's always a draw. And he talks about kind of two incredibly important tasks if you want to really know a person, and one is to illuminate, and the other is to accompany. And when he describes illuminate, I feel like that's the word for what I think I often do and really care about doing. And that is to make it easy for people to engage and let themselves be known. So I am pretty intentional in day-to-day stuff, trying to engage with people with whom who I don't know, with whom I'm having a few moments of contact, and to communicate their value through illumination, through making myself known to them and inviting them, making themselves known to me. So that's one. And I will always, and kind of regardless of the setting, when there's a chance to help someone ask a question that is going to move them, just move them toward growth or exploration, I'm very happy about that. So I do with my grandchildren pretty regularly as well. Oh yeah.
Those 3 darling grandchildren. Yes.
Yeah, they're very challenging. I mean, I'm looking at homework my 6-year-old granddaughter gave me to do. I've got to get right on it, I've got some coloring to do today.
Okay. Well, let's, we always ask this question. Gail, do you want to ask the question, the question?
Question. Yeah. So we always want to know, how do you feel or think about your own aging?
Well, I'd rather not, but
And what's next for you when you're in this spirituality practice? How do you see this 20 years from now?
I don't think that way, first of all. I just don't. I don't. I think I just don't. I think when I think about the future, I think about, maybe a year in advance, and then, we'll see. The thing that when I think about aging, though, there are moments that thinking about aging is hard. When, when I see myself take longer to do things, and I'm able to do things, and not able to do things as well as I used to, and watch my friends who are suffering from illness and injury, and I can get in a loop around that, and I have started to reframe that as it'll be part of the next prompt for creating your story. So whatever that may be, it'll just be part of the emergent design. It'll be part of what takes me to the next way, and the challenge of still being true to those things that matter to me. I told my sister-in-law, we're very different people, and I said, we were talking about older age, and she said, when I can't take care of myself, I'll be ready to be done. And I said, when I am of no value to anyone else, I'll be ready to be done. And she said, I don't understand that. And I said, to be continued. We'll talk another time. But I do feel that way. I feel like I can be of value to someone else lying flat on my back and with congestive heart failure. So we'll see. It's beautiful. Let's hope. Easy to say at 72. We'll see later.
Yeah, for sure. Donna, is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners before we close?
I don't think so. I think I really appreciate your questions and your kind attention, and I'll just be appreciative of that.
Well, we are very appreciative of you. This has been a wonderful, enlightening conversation.
Thanks.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Listeners, we'd like to see more of you at our monthly online programs. Make your voice heard as together we change the conversation about women aging. Visit Aging Reimagined Circle at womenover70.com. And Jennifer Fink's Fading Memories is another podcast that we'd like to suggest to you. It's for caregivers of loved ones with dementia. It provides insights and guidance on communicating effectively, managing stress, and coping with grief and loss. And thank you for listening.